All right, welcome back, everybody. This is a video lecture on sectioning for GE115. So we're going to talk about actually what a section is, why do we do them, and also how to create the hatch pattern that we would need within the Autocad. So hang on one second. All right, I'm back. Anyway, so let's talk about sections. When we draw our three primary views, front, top, and side, often we can't see what's going on inside the object. If it's a complicated object, it is just a mess of hidden lines that's really no help to anybody. So the primary purpose for a section is to show that inside view without the hidden lines. So what we do is we slice through at the object, take it apart, and then show that inside view. And there's lots of different ways to do it. So this is one way to do it. This is called a full section. You can see the cutting plane is here, right? And that's where you slice through it. And when you do that, we're going to look at one half or the other, and that'll be, that'll depend on, so here's a cutting plane line. If the arrows point that way, then that is the view that we're looking at. So we're going to look at this side of the object, okay? So the cutting plane here, we're clearly looking at this far side. So the arrows would have been like that. So the arrows point to the direction of the view, and the cutting plane line shows you where we're slicing through the object. This is called a full section because you're slicing fully through the object. So it may look like you're looking at half the object, but it's not a half section, it's a full section. You're cut fully through the object. If you don't cut fully through the object, then it could be a half section or a quarter section. Okay, so when we do that, we represent the view instead of a bunch of hidden lines like a typical side view would be. We represent the section view, and it's called section AA, or however you labeled your cutting plane. So here you can see the cutting plane is labeled A and A. Okay, so the section is section AA, cutting fully through the object. Now, often we show that cut on the plan view or the top view or the front view, whatever is the most descriptive. You can put it anywhere, like they've put it here on this, what appears to be a side view of this, right? And they put the cut there, and then this developed the section. So that's how it all ties together. This labeling is very important in that it matches the cutting plane line. It's got to match, so you can match those two up. If we can keep them in projection of each other, that would be helpful, but we don't have to. We can place sections anywhere. So that's kind of nice. Like the front, top, and the right side views, those all have to be in projection. That's a rule. But your section can be anywhere. You can do this cut plane line, and the section could be, down in the corner or something. Okay. Now, when you cut through the object, where you cut through material, where it's not air, but it's material, we have to put a hatch pattern in. Now, these hatch patterns have evolved over time with CAD. We used to just use this hatch pattern for everything, okay? But over time, and that's all we're going to use is this hatch pattern for us for now. But the hatch pattern can change if the material changes. And the angle of the hatch pattern should change if it's a different part. So if you section through something that has multiple parts in it, that section, this is called a section line. This is called a cutting plane line. These section lines, they need to be at an angle. They cannot be horizontal or vertical, and you don't want them to kind of line up parallel with any visible lines. So these visible lines, we would like the hatch to go off at some angle, and I'll show you how to control that. It's pretty easy. And I'll show you how to make this hatch pattern, okay? So the hatch pattern goes in where the material gets cut, Okay, that's how we show where the material is. And then these would all be just voids, holes, right? Or just recesses. And you can see that there's air in there. There's air in there, and this shows us where that air is. All of this can be dimensioned now. That's the point. All of this cannot be dimensioned because it's a hidden line. We can't dimension to a hidden line. All right, so you're going to do some of these. Here they talk about cutting plane lines. So most often it's the phantom line that's used, but we can use a hidden line. But that cutting plane line is supposed to be the thickest line on the drawing. So this is where you're going to have to start working with your thicknesses. It cannot show up as just a hidden line or a thin line. It's supposed to jump out at you and be really bold and obnoxious, actually. So that's what we're going to try and do. And you'll see that they've tried to do that on some of these where this is supposed to be thicker than these other ones. Okay. They do talk about hatches in here and that we have all these fancy hatches, and we do. That's true. Notice here, we can't dimension to that hidden line. That's why that's not correct, but we can dimension to the section view. So that's why we do it. Here's an example of a half section, right? Not cutting fully through the part, but just cutting through half the part. And notice that the views change here. This view is looking this way. This view is looking this way. So here's the section, right, that we see. Very good. This is called an offset section where the cutting plane line picks up two geometries, yet the section view shows it as just one flat surface. Again, it's like a knife and we can cut through the object anywhere we want to. There's a lot of different sections that you can do, okay? And the book is going through many of them. There's rotated sections, there's offset sections, there's full and half sections, all kinds, okay? All right, let's look at your exercise that you're gonna do. I tried to pick some that are a little more descriptive here than some of the other ones. So I think you're gonna do 9 and 10, so these two. So you're going to have to figure out what this three-dimensional object looks like a little bit. You have to kind of construct that in your head. But then it says put the section here. Now, I don't really want you to have to sketch it. It says sketch, but why don't we just go ahead and do it in CAD, and you'll have to assume some of these dimensions. Now, if you have a scale, you can literally lay that scale down on there. I'm looking for one. I don't see one laying here. There's probably one in my bag. Any scale will work. It'll give you the size and geometry of it. See it. One more spot. Oh, yeah, here's my scale. So you can use a scale. This is an engineer scale, if you have one, and that'll give you some sizes of it. Literally just measure it, right? And just keep it as accurate as you want. If you use the inch scale, that would be straight up inches, right? So you can measure it, and then that'll help you draw it in Autocad and then draw the section. Here's what they want. They want this section, right? So looking at it this way, it's a round object. So it's going to have some, you know, top and bottom to that section view because we're going to see the whole thing. But then, you know, we're cutting through what looks to be like a hole at the bottom, right? And there's another geometry on top. So that's just the side view that picks everything. It looks like maybe there's a recess all the way around. So this is a little bit of a puzzle for you to figure this object out. You might want to figure the object out first and then go for the section view. So this is really good practice trying to get 2-dimension, 3-dimension stuff in your head. But when you're done, go ahead and label this AA and then section. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about hatching a little bit in AutoCAD. So let's go for a new share and AutoCAD. All right. I'm going to minimize myself a little bit here. And I'm just going to give myself a quick object. Just so we have something to work with. really herky-jerky. I just don't know why. Some days it's just super fast. It could be the amount of stuff I have open. Makes it a little bit annoying. So I'm just going to give myself an object that then we can hatch it out, right? So maybe I'll put another circle out. Just trying to give myself something a little more complicated. But it's pretty simple, okay? And there's a lot of settings that can go into hatching. So what I use is B hatch or boundary hatch. Like you can type in hatch, and then it'll kind of go to the old school hatch right here. If you go B hatch, that's a boundary hatch. Looks very much the same. And the way that you pick the boundary is you can select objects, but typically those objects need to stop at the intersection. So I want to hatch this. This is a hole. I want to hatch this area out here. Okay. If it's a fairly simple shape like this, one of the nice ways to do it is called points. And that's where you just can go inside an area. I'm not doing anything. It's automatically doing this. But you can just go inside an area and it'll look for a boundary. Okay. Really nice. So I'm not going to pick it because that looks way too dense. All right. So the way you change that is with the hatch scale. That's right here, hatch scale. Okay, hatch pattern scale. So I'm going to go ahead and put it at 5. And then I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to hit the end of that. And then I can go in here and say, oh, a hatch scale of 5 looks a little better. Again, I haven't placed it yet. Once you place it, then it's kind of there. You can still modify it, but if you can kind of get this rhythm down as you're doing it. That angle looks good, but if I wanted to change the angle, you can see the angle is 0, so that pattern is automatically set to that angle, right? So if I went like 10, you'll see what it does. It kind of steepens it up a little bit. Let's do 40. So you can get the difference. Now it's getting close to vertical. I like it. So I'm going to go back to 0, which is probably an automatic 45 degrees type of thing. Okay. And there's a bunch of different patterns you can choose, right? The ANSI 31 is one that's very commonly used just for boundary hatching. All right. Once you get that chosen, then you can click and say close hatch. So there we go. So it's pretty easy to do. You do always want to look at that hatch pattern in your layout. So, and to make sure it's showing up well here, maybe this, is going to take a scale. And hatches are kind of annotative. They do adjust, but you never really know exactly what you're going to get is my kind of feeling. So if this had to be here, that looks okay. Not too bad. So it doesn't hurt to get your scale working. So you know exactly how it's going to fit on a piece of paper, and don't just look at it here. But with hatching, it's pretty one-to-one. You kind of get what you get. So once you set it up here, it'll work well for you. Let's talk about cutting plane line, because that one is tricky to get. You can use, I'm just going to give myself a different view of this thing, even though I really don't know, what it looks like. But if it's showing up as kind of a hole here, right, then it's probably some kind of a circle up in here. Get this exact. So I'm going to guess on you. Let's set a bad precedent, wouldn't it? That could be this. Drag that up and then say circle, and then try to drag this out, see if it'll let me. Yeah, it did. So that circle is the same size as that hole. Get used to those marching eights, and it's okay that it's off because I'm going to put my cutting plane right through it, right? And then this must go somehow, it goes through it this way, right? It must, and for it to show up as a hole, it goes through it this way. So it must have some kind of hopefully it'll make sense. Now these would need to be hidden, right? So that views that works out right there. This has a little shoulder on it somewhere here. And these should be hidden, but I gotta load that long cut because I didn't. Let's see. See if I can just overpower it with a line type, but it's not gonna. Load it. This is just gonna bring it into the drawing so I can use it. So I want to be somewhat accurate with you. So I can take these two lines right here and overpower the layer control and make it hidden. Okay. So something like that. Now, this is a section view, and it's a section view that must cut through here like this. Because when it cuts through, it's going to show me this in long form, and it's going to show me this hole as a circle, right? So the cutting plane, it comes through here, right? And I said that should be phantom. So I'm not going to put the arrows on. I'm going to show you a different way of putting the arrows on how I do it. But I need this to be now a phantom line. So I'm going to, again, I'm not going to use layer control for this. I'm just going to actually load that line that I want. So let's load it and go find phantom. It's alphabetical. Okay. And okay. And then I'm going to toss it and make it phantom. Okay. Now, notice the line type scale is kind of tight. I don't like that. So if I right click, so I grip it, right click on it, I can look at the properties. And in the properties, you will see line type scale. So I'm going to open that up to something like 5. So that's nice. Now I want it super thick. And super thick here doesn't always look the same here. So I would do it in this view. So I'm going to go into model space in this view, and I'd like to change the thickness of this thing. And you'll see you have a bunch of thicknesses. They're kind of decimal. You can highlight over them and choose. Now, nothing happened, nothing changed. And that's because there's a line weight button, believe it or not. And it's down here in these quick buttons. So one of these is line weight. Show hide line weights right there. So I'm going to click that and it shows it. All right, nice. But notice how my phantom line here, well, that looks pretty bad, but I don't really care about it here, but it doesn't show up at all, right? Well, that's because of the line type scale. It's different in paper space. So I'm going to go back to 1 and just see if it shows up. Check that out. So I can't tell you why that is the case, but it is the case. You want to view it here to get these things to look good, right? Because that's looking good. That's a nice, it's a nice line. So I would maybe continue to work with it here. So I'll zoom in, I'll go to model space. I'm going to add a line going up, and I'm going to show you then how to make your arrowhead. And I'm just kind of guessing. I would want these to be the same thickness as what I had before, which I probably should have noted, but I'm just going to try one of these. I don't think that's exactly the same, but it looks pretty good, right? All right, so now the large arrows, I'm going to manually construct those, believe it or not. I have a decent cutting plane line in. That wasn't that bad to do. Once you do that a few times, you get used to that. Arrowheads, they're a pain just to throw an arrowhead on and make it the size you want. I'd probably go back to paper and kind of scroll a little bit and then go back into model space. But the way to do it is what's called a polyline. And a polyline you can make any width you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a polyline with the starting width kind of wide and an ending width 0. So it's going to go to a point, wide to nothing. And a little trial and error here because of the scaling within the model to paper space. But polyline is PL. And I'm going to start it here. But now to get it to change widths, I have to use one of the many options to polyline. And one of the options is W for width. And you can see them down here. Here's some options in the, oops, go away, right? And one of them is width right there. So I'm going to type in W, and it's going to say, specify the starting width. So I want it kind of wide, and I really don't know anything about the size of this thing. So I'm just going to put in like 0.5. I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to put in 0 for the ending width and hit enter. And then when I kind of stretch it out, I get a feel for what I got. Right? So that was 0.5 to 0. Not delightful, right? So what I did then, I worked the other side and I said, oh, sorry, here's my space, polyline, and started here. Now I know I want that W starting width to be like 1, ending width to be 0, and then I can drag it out a little bit. So I like that much better. Then I would erase this arrow. And then I would copy this arrow. Now, you might be thinking, gosh, what a pain. There's got to be a simpler way. There really isn't a simpler way. This is the easiest way. Once you get it done and you have to use it more, we could save that graphic and use it over and over. And when we talk about blocks in the future, I can show you that. But that's the way I make cutting plane lines. I just draw the line all the way up to the arrowhead and then I put the arrowhead in with polyline. Notice I did it in this view. This is the print view. It's always going to look a little different here. So that's really super ugly, I know. That's why there is a line weight button. So you don't show that line weight. You can just see that kind of thing until you get to layout. And once you get into layout, don't forget to hit your line weight button because we do want those things to be nice and thick for our sections, okay? All right, so play with that. It can be a real struggle. So I covered a lot. Feel free to rewind me and go through it again and practice. All right, take care.